Hi, my name is Lena, and I have spent the last 6 months carrying plates that are heavier than the words my relatives throw at me. On the night everything changed, the dining room glowed with soft amber light. Forks chimed against porcelain, and the scent of garlic butter drifted through the ceiling fans. Table 12 was mine. Table 12 was also my family. They waved me over with the same fingers they used to point and laugh when I told them I was saving up for something big. To them, I was the girl who could never be more than a waitress in someone else's house. I balanced a tray of sparkling water and lemon slices. My aunt looked at my shoes and snorted. My cousin raised his phone to record my name tag. My brother clinked his glass and said I should be quick, because their real server was probably busy. The table laughed. I smiled the way servers smile when they learn to tuck their pride behind their teeth. In that moment, I felt every lesson this room had taught me. How to lift without shaking. How to walk through a storm of voices and hear only the order number. How to make people feel important while they made me invisible. A birthday cake for my cousin arrived from the kitchen, candles already lit. They told me to sing. They told me to clap. They told me to bring more bread, because this place never gives enough, then laughed like it was the funniest line in the world. I kept moving. I refilled their glasses. I replaced stained napkins with clean ones. I nodded when my uncle asked if I ever got tired of pretending to be cheerful. The truth was yes. The truth was I was not pretending. If you were treated like a servant by your own family in the middle of a crowded dining room, would you swallow it for one more night? Or would you make them taste the check they never saw coming? When my shift manager asked me to step into the back office, I wiped my hands and went. A sure hole separated the heat of the kitchen from the hush of that little room. Inside, the air was cool and still. A folder sat on the desk, cream paper tucked neatly inside. The lawyer was already waiting with 2 pens. The owner could not attend, but the signature line with his name waited for mine to stand beside it. My heart did not race. It settled, like water after a boat stops rocking. I had worked 2 jobs, taken night classes in accounting, and met with the landlord more times than I could count. I knew every hinge in this place. I knew every stain in the grout. I knew exactly what I was buying. I pressed the pen to the line. The ink felt steady. When I walked back into the dining room, the music was a gentle hum and the candles at table 12 had melted to bright little lakes of wax. My cousin lifted his phone again, ready for another joke at my expense. I set the last basket of warm bread on their table and took a breath. The room carried the sound the way a theater carries a secret. I was done being their servant. I had something else to serve. The restaurant had always been a theater of shadows and light. Brass chandeliers dangled above polished wooden tables, their bulbs glowing like liquid amber. Velvet curtains muffled the traffic outside, so that once you stepped inside, the world felt suspended in a slow dream. The air smelled of rosemary, garlic butter, and roasted meat, a perfume that clung to the walls and the white uniforms of the staff. I wore that uniform too. Crisp apron, black shoes polished just enough to catch a shine. My hair tied back in a not-so-tight it pulled at my scalp. Every movement rehearsed, every smile measured. The soundscape was a symphony of glasses chimming, forks scraping, conversations rising and falling like waves. Yet beneath the music of the evening, I felt the silence round my own existence. Guests looked through me as if I were, yet I carried their entire evening in the tray balanced on my shoulder. Table 12, in the far corner beneath the largest chandelier, seemed brighter than the rest. The linen was spotless, the cutlery gleamed, and the crystal glasses caught the light like prisms. That table was mine to serve. But what unsettled me was not the weight of the dishes. It was the people seated there. My family, dressed in their weekend best, coats draped over chairs, jewelry flashing like little knives. My uncle's booming laughter carried across the room. My aunt leaned into her glass of wine as if she were holding court. My cousins hunched over their phones, tapping screens lit brighter than their faces. I approached with a tray of water and lemon slices, feeling smaller with each step. My shoes clicked against the marble, but their laughter swallowed the sound. To them, I was part of the furniture, no different from the chairs they sat on or the table that held their plates. I set down the glasses carefully, and already I caught my cousin's smirk reflected in the silver spoon. The chandelier above us trembled slightly from the hum of the air conditioner. Shadows flickered on the tablecloth, dancing over the food like dark waves. Every detail of this room etched itself into me. The scent of grilled steak that lingered, the faint trace of cologne from the men who brushed past, the warmth of bread rolls inside their basket. All of it framed me as the outsider in my own bloodline. Have you ever stood in a room so grand, so alive with chatter and celebration, and felt as if you were invisible in the very place you should belong? That night, under the golden glow of the chandeliers, I was not a daughter, not a niece, not a cousin. I was their servant. The first sting came in laughter disguised as conversation. My aunt looked me up and down, her lips curling as she tapped her fingernails against the rim of her wine glass. Imagine, she said loud enough for the whole table to hear. Arlena's serving food instead of studying for something important. At least she knows her place. Heat spread across my cheeks, but I forced my smile to stay. I poured water into her glass with a steady hand. My cousin leaned back in his chair, phone raised as if he were capturing a rare spectacle. Smile for the camera, Lena. I'll post it with the caption, "Family dinner, served by our very own waitress." He chuckled, showing the screen to the others. The table erupted. I felt the sting again, sharper this time. Still, I bowed slightly, collected the empty bread basket, and stepped back. "Don't forget the butter," my uncle added, waving his hand as if I were invisible unless summoned. "You should be quick. This place charges enough. You'd think they'd hire proper staff." My throat tightened. Proper staff. That was all I was to him. I tucked the basket under my arm and turned, only to hear another voice, my brother's this time, smooth and cutting. "She's not proper staff, uncle. She's family." But I guess tonight she plays both roles. The laughter that followed rolled over me like thunder. My hands trembled against the tray, but I tightened my grip until my knuckles turned white. I wanted to speak, to tell them this uniform was not shame, but armor. Yet the words froze at the edge of my tongue. I set the fresh basket of bread before them, placing each roll with care. My aunt reached for one without even glancing at me. She spoke over my shoulder to the others. What a pity. All that potential, and this is where she ends up. Carrying plates, wiping spills. A servant in her own family's shadow. Her words landed harder than any weight I had ever carried in my hands. I could feel my heart pounding beneath the apron, each beat louder than the clinking of their glasses. In that moment, I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw down the tray and let them watch it shatter. But I didn't. I swallowed my anger, tucked it deep inside, and let the silence wrap around me like chains. Have you ever been humiliated by the people who should have lifted you up, left voiceless in a room where every laugh was aimed at your dignity? That was my reality at table 12, where family became strangers and cruelty wore the mask of celebration. Their laughter that night was not the first time I had been placed beneath their feet. It was only the latest echo of years stacked upon years of small cruelties, each one carving a scar no one else could see. I remembered when I was 17, standing at the graduation stage, waiting for my name to be called. My cousin had received a standing ovation, flowers piled in her arms. When my name came, my family clapped half-heartedly, some not at all. Later that night, my aunt whispered that I should not expect much in life because I lacked ambition. She never saw the long hours I worked in secret to help pay my mother's medical bills. She only saw what was easy to mock. I remembered when my brother asked me to lend him money for his startup. I gave him everything I had saved, every dollar from my part-time shifts. When his business finally took off, he stood before the family and declared, "I built this from nothing." He did not look at me. He did not acknowledge me. When I asked if he could repay me, he smiled coldly and said, "Family doesn't keep receipts." I remembered the Christmas photo where I stood on the far edge of the frame. When the printed version arrived weeks later, I was missing, cropped out cleanly, as though I had never been there. My mother cried quietly in the kitchen, but no one confronted whoever had made the cut. I swallowed the ache and told myself I would not let a photograph erase me. Yet it did. It erased me in their eyes. Every holiday, every birthday, the same story repeated. I would cook, clean, set the table, wrap the gifts, and when the moment came to celebrate, they would shine the light only on themselves. My hands built the stage, but I was never allowed to stand on it. Even when I chose to work at the restaurant, it became a weapon they used against me. Only people with no future wait tables, my cousin had once said, flipping her hair while I cleared her plate. They saw the uniform as failure. They never understood that every tip, every saved dollar, was a brick I laid towards something greater. Do you know the pain of being buried alive not under earth, but under years of silence, dismissals, and half-smiles that cut deeper than insults? That was my life with them. They buried me again and again, until even I almost forgot I was still breathing beneath the weight. But I kept going. I kept saving. I studied in the slivers of time between shifts. I read contracts under the dim light of the break room. I asked questions no one thought a waitress would dare to ask. And slowly, quietly, I built the life they swore I would never have. That night in the restaurant, when they treated me like a servant in front of strangers, they believed it was just another moment to laugh at me. What they did not know was that every humiliation, every injustice, had led me here. To this night. To the folder waiting in the office. To the signature that would change everything. The call to the office came like a whisper cutting through the clamor of the dining room. My manager leaned close and said, "They're ready for you." No one at table 12 noticed. They were too busy ordering more wine, laughing at jokes made at my expense. I placed the last dish gently on their table, wiped my hands on my apron, and walked away as if I were only heading for the kitchen. The hallway to the office was narrow, lined with framed photographs of the restaurant's early years. Black and white images of the original owner standing proudly beside chefs, smiling guests, and gleaming banquet halls. I slowed my pace, my reflection flickering in the glass frames like a shadow moving between worlds. A waitress on one side, something else on the other. When I opened the office door, the air felt cooler, quieter, almost reverent. A folder lay on the desk, its edges crisp, its papers neatly aligned. A lawyer sat across from it, glasses perched on the tip of his nose, pen in hand. "Everything is in order," he said softly. "Once you sign, the restaurant is officially yours." My chest rose slowly as if drawing breath for the first time in years. I sat down, my apron still tied around my waist, my hair still damp from sweat and steam. In that moment, I was both waitress and buyer, servant and owner. The paper in front of me held not just a contract, but a record of every night I had been mocked, every time I had been overlooked, every insult swallowed in silence. I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. The ink slid across the page like a blade cutting through years of chains. With one signature, I was no longer a shadow in this place. I was its future. The lawyer closed the folder, his expression warm but professional. "Congratulations, Ms. Alvarez. From this moment, the restaurant is yours." I stood and smoothed my apron. The irony wasn't lost on me. Minutes earlier, my family had waved me over as though I were their servant. Minutes earlier, they had laughed at the girl in the uniform. Now, I held the deed to the very ground beneath their chairs. As I stepped back into the hallway, the sound of the dining room returned, muffled at first, then swelling louder with every step. The laughter from table 12 grew sharper, like knives clashing in the distance. They had no idea what was about to unfold. Have you ever held a truth so powerful that it burned inside you, begging to be revealed, knowing the moment you spoke it, the world would never look at you the same again? That was what I carried as I walked back toward the chandeliers, the polished wood, and the family who thought I would always bow my head. When I returned to the dining room, the golden light from the chandeliers fell across table 12 like a spotlight on a stage. My family's laughter spilled into the air, loud enough that nearby tables turned to look. I stood at the edge, the tray balanced in my hands, but this time I was not carrying plates. I was carrying a truth too heavy to hide any longer. Finally, my aunt said, snapping her fingers, "More bread, girl. And don't forget the butter this time." I placed the tray on the table. Instead of bread, I laid down a single envelope. My cousin frowned. My uncle grunted impatiently. My brother smirked, already preparing a joke. "What's this?" he asked, nudging the envelope with his fork. "Tonight," I said, my voice calm but firm, "your meal is on the house." "Because the house is mine." For a moment, silence. Then, laughter again, sharper, almost cruel. My cousin waved his phone like a conductor's baton. "Oh, that's good. That's rich. Lena, the waitress, owns this place. We should toast to her imagination." But the laughter died as quickly as it rose when I unfolded the papers inside the envelope. The restaurant's deed, the official seal glinting under the chandelier. The lawyer had signed, the owner had signed, and there was my name in ink, dark and undeniable. The air shifted. Conversations at nearby tables hushed. A server passing by froze mid-step, eyes wide. My family stared at the paper, their smiles collapsing. My aunt's glass slipped from her fingers and shattered against the marble, wine blooming like blood across the floor. "You're lying," my uncle hissed, though his voice trembled. "No," I replied. "For years, you treated me as nothing more than a servant. Tonight, I became the owner of the very place where you laugh at me. Every dish you order, every drink you sip, every chair you sit on, belongs to me now." The chandelier above us seemed to burn brighter, as though the room itself had chosen sides. My brother's smirk vanished, replaced by a pale silence. My cousin lowered his phone slowly, realizing the spectacle he had tried to record was not humiliation, but his own undoing. All around us, guests whispered. Some clapped quietly, others simply stared. The restaurant had become a stage, and I stood at its center, no longer invisible, no longer booed. Have you ever seen the faces of those who thought they owned you crumple in the instant they realize you are the one who holds the power? That was the moment I had waited for all my life. And it happened in the very room where they had mocked me seconds before. The silence after my words was louder than their laughter had ever been. My aunt's hand trembled above the broken glass. My uncle's jaw hung half open, and my cousin still clutched his phone, but dared not press record. My brother's eyes darted between the papers and my face as if searching for a loophole, a way to laugh this off. But there was none. I stood tall, my apron still tied, my hair still pulled tight, but the weight on my shoulders was gone. For the first time, I wasn't the one serving. I was the one who owned the table they sat at, the chairs they leaned on, the very roof above their heads. "You spent years mocking me," I said, my voice steady, echoing across the room. "Every insult, every dismissal, every time you told me I would never be more than a servant. Tonight, you eat at my table, and you will never forget it." The words cut through the air like glass breaking. Round us, the other diners fell quiet. their forks suspended, their gazes fixed on the scene unfolding beneath the chandelier. Some even smiled, strangers who didn't know my story but understood justice when they saw it. My aunt tried to gather herself, brushing at the spilled wine with the corner of a napkin. "This is a mistake." "It must be." "It's not," I interrupted. "The deed is mine. The staff answers to me. The kitchen runs because of me. And this table, your table, is here because I allow it." Her face collapsed, her voice fading into silence. My uncle leaned back in his chair, suddenly smaller, as though the weight of the room had pressed down on him. My cousin turned his phone face down, ashamed to have thought my humiliation would be the entertainment of the night. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to gloat. My calm was enough. My truth was enough. With the papers in my hand and their silence choking them, I delivered the final blow. "You wanted a servant at your table tonight," I said, folding the papers neatly. "Instead, you met the owner. Remember that the next time you think someone is beneath you." The room erupted not in laughter, but in applause. It began at a corner table, then spread across the restaurant, strangers clapping, some even standing. My family sat frozen in the middle of it all, humiliated not by me, but by their own arrogance revealed under the light. That was my revenge. Not anger, not cruelty, just the truth, laid bare in front of everyone they had hoped would see me bow. When the applause faded, the restaurant returned to its natural rhythm. But something in the air had changed. The chandeliers glowed warmer, the music softer, as if the entire space had taken a deep breath of relief. My family, however, could not find their voices. They sat stiff and silent, unable to touch the plates in front of them. Their feast had turned to ashes the moment they realized whose house they were seated in. I did not linger. I did not wait for their excuses or half-hearted apologies. I placed the sign deep back into the envelope, tucked it under my arm, and untied my apron. It fell across the table with a quiet finality, like a curtain closing at the end of a play. Without another word, I turned and walked through the dining room. Each step was steady, my head high, the clapping of strangers echoing faintly behind me outside. The night air was cool against my face, carrying the scent of rain on the horizon. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. The chains of humiliation that had bound me through birthdays, holidays, and dinners had broken in an instant. I had not just taken back my dignity, I had claimed the very ground where they tried to bury it. Later, my phone buzzed with messages. A cousin asking if we could talk. An aunt leaving a string of unanswered calls. Even my brother sent a short text, "We didn't know you were serious. Can we start over?" I read each one, then let the screen go dark. Silence was my answer, because true revenge is not screaming or fighting. It is living without their chains round my neck. It is owning the space where they once mocked me. It is knowing they will never step into this restaurant again without remembering the night the servant became the master. They buried me with laughter, but I dug myself out with truth, and under the glow of the chandeliers, I showed them that no one stays invisible forever.